right. The theme is this needs to be said. So apparently Candace Owens is receiving quite a bit of backlash. And that is because apparently she appeared on Press TV, which is so funny because a number of us on the left have been on Press TV. So it's like the left doesn't give us like crap for that, but conservatives are giving Candace crap for going on Press TV. And also some of the things that she said on this conversation recently with Piers Morgan. By the way, Piers Morgan has officially blocked me. I think it's funny. I think it's funny. This conversation that she had with Piers Morgan recently, we need to dive into some of this because she basically explains to him that, like, well, no, we're done with the wars. Israel is wrong. And one of the things that she said, I think that's getting a lot of buzz is that she would rather her children go to prison than go fight for the military. Check this out.
If he suddenly commits, troops on the ground, then that becomes a different thing altogether. But even when Trump talked about regime change, I think he meant from within, as we saw in Syria in December, where the people themselves rise up. And if that was to happen, why would that be a bad thing?
Okay, so you're asking a lot of questions here. So first and foremost, the idea that you have to formally declare war on like a piece of paper in order for war to happen is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, he dropped bombs. He dropped bombs in Iran. So yes, we are a part of this war, whether we like it or not. Iran is now speaking and saying that they're going to shut down the Hormuz Straits. There's going to be impact on oil.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that when the main victim of doing that would be Iran? I mean, 50% of China, of the traffic of stuff through there is for China, which is one of their allies.
Don't care, not my business. The point that I'm making here is that to make the assumption that you can just drop bombs on a country and then say, well, you know what, we didn't formally declare war is patently ridiculous. I think that is just patently ridiculous.
What about when he killed General Soleimani, one of Iran's top military commanders?
Sure, an assassination, a strike, and that, of course, came with some risk. It's a little bit different to be flying out B-6 bombers in the middle of the night and dropping bombs at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu, which brings me to the second point. The reason that America wants a regime change in Iran is because Bibi Netanyahu is demanding it. And that answers the question as to why there is this split in the MAGA movement. What we are seeing right now is the infiltration of Israel first people, the neocons, people who have always wanted never-ending wars, and the people who have recognized that following Israel's foreign policy initiatives has led to America being on the decline. And so that's where I stand. I am with the MAGA people who grew up, I call us Generation 9/11, who were told that America was going to be rendered safer, cleaner. All we had to do was agree to go to, well, ironically, war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. It's all of the same rhetoric dating back to 9/11, all of the same tactics of trying to smear people who are against this war as supporting jihadists. It is not my business to affect a regime change in Iran. It's simply not our business. It doesn't impact us one way or the other.
Let's pause here for a second. So again, many of you watching do remember, September 11. I do. I remember the war in Iraq, and I remember the bag of goods that was sold to us by our government and also, of course, corporate media during that time. And there are some of us that know people that went to Iraq and did not come back. I know one person in particular, a classmate of mine, did not return from the war in Iraq. And I think what failed this time around is like people like Piers Morgan, who Piers don't live here. People like Piers Morgan doesn't understand that a lot of us, particularly in this country, again, September, the war in Iraq wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean? Like before I could go talk back towards the Vietnam War, but September 11 wasn't that long ago. Okay. So we remember. And this whole idea, what they've been trying to sell us, there was actually a commentator on corporate media the other day that used the phrase weapons of mass destruction. I'm like, seriously? Like, you're going with this again? So people are wiser now. Like back then, a lot of us, we didn't know. I was very young. Like we just didn't know. But people are wiser now. And no, it didn't work. You're not going to sell this war to the American people. So it sincerely backfired. And there are some people that did vote for Trump, like Candace and Dave Smith. They've been heavily pushing back against this.
And we also are completely done with the idea that with these decades-long idea that we're doing it to spread democracy because we believe in international liberalism. There was no imminent threat to the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision. And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
Okay, but you wouldn't disagree, presumably, that Iran has been the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. I mean, that's widely accepted and recognized. They've done
it widely accepted. No, that's just kind of...
Really? You don't think they
Israel
have?
has been a terrorist state. Okay, Israel now is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people. So I'm.
That's right. That part right there, that is true. The real terror is Israel. They're the one attacking everybody. They're the one killing everybody.
I'm really over this idea like somehow Israel has the moral high ground and we have to get behind them.
I didn't say
because
that.
We got to go after the bad guys.
I wasn't saying that.
We have.
Oh, hang on. Look, we can come to Gaza where I think we'll reach agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months. But
it's relevant.
Question.
If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned about Iran having nukes. But I'm concerned about Israel, who won't even admit that they have nukes, having nukes, while at the same time, they are executing a genocide and a Holocaust in Gaza that the world is watching. So who's the bigger terrorist is the question today. I would say as an American that if we're going to get behind a regime change, it should be in Israel first. So that would be my position. I think the position of a lot of people who are waking up to the fact that Zionism has brought us nothing but grief in America. Can you name one positive thing that Zionists have contributed to America?
No. And then also he don't live here, but that would be a no. Now, I, for one, this is where I do push back. I don't agree with regime change at all. I don't think the US or the West or any country should implement regime change in another country. You have to let these countries function as they are. And history has shown us, whether it's Israel or whoever, honestly, I don't think we should even have a relationship with Israel, period. And I've been that way for quite some time. But I would also add to this point. I don't like what she does here with, well, we should have regime change in Israel, because what that does is it gives some people the impression that there can be a positive type of regime change. And there's no positive that comes from regime change. After regime changes, those countries are worse off than they were before, right? So I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the U.S. intervention. I don't agree with regime changes. I'm 100% against that. So I don't agree with her there.
Us fighting these perpetual wars on behalf of Zionism has contributed to America.
But can you also recognize that Israel, placed where it is as a tiny thumbprint in the middle of a region where you have massive countries full of a lot of people that want to wish them harm, and in the case of the terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, actually want to get rid of Israel and all Israelis altogether, can you accept that if you have a huge nation like Iran with 90 million people, and they are facilitating these terror groups to that purpose, that Iran has to defend itself? Now, I would not.
Now, let's pause here. I think he misspoke. I think he was talking about Israel, but he said Iran. So let me make something very clear. First of all, Israel was created. 1948 was created. You can't just waltz your little happy ass into an area where all these other countries are there and people are living a certain lifestyle, and people were living a certain lifestyle in Palestine at that point in time. And there were Jewish people there and there were Palestinians there, and they lived together side by side in peace, from what I understand, until y'all motherfuckers showed up. So if you are that afraid, then you are free to go to Russia, Ukraine, Poland, For the American ones who pretend like they're not and they went and settled there, you got New York, New Jersey, California. You are free to go do that, okay? Two, there is a big difference between these countries wish something upon someone and a country is doing something to someone. Because Israel is actively doing something to someone. It is Israel that's committing a genocide, not Iran. No one told them to, ain't nobody, you chose to come there. You chose to step foot there. Now, from what I understand, Russia is very large. Moscow, from what I understand, is an international, clean, great city, according to people who have been there that I know. They can go back to Moscow. They can high track it back to Poland. There's many other places that they can go to if they are that afraid. But what you don't get to do is you colonize a place, you come in there, you take over, you push the people who were already there out, and then you basically try to tell them that they can't come back to the land that they were born in. That's what you don't get to do. And then you don't get to cry victim after doing so. That's how I see it.
I disagree with you about what has been going on in Gaza in the last few months. I've been very vocal in my criticism of that. Nor do I disagree, by the way, that it wouldn't help Israel if they did have regime change and Netanyahu wasn't prime minister anymore. So on those points, I think we have agreement. But I come back to the fact that the reason Trump has done this, I think, is that he has for a long time said Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. I think he's absolutely right to believe that would be a pretty terrifying escalation of the power of a country that's been so wedded to terrorism in the region. And I think he took the action for that reason. So I don't really agree that he's only doing it because Bibi Netanyahu wants him to go along and do it. I think he's doing it because he believes it's in America's strategic interest that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon.
So we'll pause there and then we'll go to the next part that I wanted to show. So to respond to that one, well, that statement looks pretty foolish now considering the data I showed you guys today, the news that broke that Donald Trump is trying to work with Iran and give them permission to develop a nuclear program, civilian program, and is also trying to offer them money to do so. So now Piers Morgan's statement don't even make any damn sense. So I wonder, will he come back and correct that? No. This is probably why he blocked me, because I called him out. You're just absolutely ridiculous. I see you for what you are. Now we go to this part here that I also think is important.
Fact that we have 2,000 troops stationed in Syria right now under the guise of saying that we're fighting ISIS, while at the same time we know that Bibi Netanyahu funded the al-Qaeda adjacent front because he wanted to overthrow Syria. And they, again, expand their borders, immediately take on territory and sell us absolute nonsense. We're talking about funding Hamas. Bibi Netanyahu funded Hamas. There is footage of Bibi Netanyahu saying this stuff on camera. So it's just so ridiculous to me to pretend that they're in some predicament, that they may be eradicated soon, which is why they have to keep funding all of these terrorist groups and then pretending that they're victims of terror, when in fact they are the people that are imparting it worldwide. I just think that, like I said, Generation 9/11 has grown up, and I think that our eyes are very clear here, and we recognize that our relationship with Israel has become increasingly problematic, and it always was problematic. So I'll again ask the questions, Piers. I'm asking you because we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Name something positive that our Zionist AIPAC foreign policy has brought to America.
Well, I think the positive side of, if you want an answer about that, is that America has been Israel's steadfast ally because it recognizes as a country that Israel has been under an almost unique, multifaceted threat on its border for a very long time.
That's not a gift to the United States. I'm sorry, again. What has Israel brought to the United States? Nothing. We give them money. We give them $3.8 billion a year. We give them money. They have free health care. They have free college. We don't. But we're giving them money.
People that want to destroy it. That you may not see that as a benefit, but Israel has been very supportive to the United States in many ways. right? So why shouldn't America?
I just want something concrete that has been benefit. Like, we got better in America in this way. Just name something. Gas prices, just something that the average American can relate to.
Well, you're not going to have a correlation between Zionism and gas prices in America. Of course, you're not.
No,
because they have given us nothing. Sunday, I'm going to do a deep dive into that new economic report because I'm going to show you those numbers. Things are not good for Donald Trump. I'm going to show you those economic numbers on Sunday when I go live because, see, there's been so much focus on the Middle East and foreign policy because of a lot of these these crazy decisions that Donald Trump has been making. And I think a lot of us have kind of, turned our cheek over in this direction, and we lost focus on what's happening on the domestic front with the economy. But I'm going to pull out those numbers for you on Sunday. And I got news for you. It is not good for Donald Trump. It is not. So to answer this other question, let's think about what has happened here, right? Has homelessness decreased in this country because of our relationship with Israel? No, it hasn't even decreased at all. Hasn't decreased at all. Do we have a living wage paid to everyone in this country? No. Is home ownership, has that increased? No. See, all of these things are decreasing. This country is declining. America is on the decline. But we're giving $3.8 billion a year to Israel. I don't know. That's like taking care of somebody else's kids, but not taking care of your own damn kids, It's like if your kids need food and they need diapers, are you just going to walk out the house and not get that for your kids, but you're going to go across the street and give it to somebody else's kids? You got to take care of your own house first. And that's not happening.
I'm just giving you an
obviously
example to just tell me one thing that
tangible
because what your argument here is like, well, you get a pat on the back and you can say that you helped this country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians, the horrific story
well, they weren't
of what happened.
pretending to be refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust. Let's
be clear. Let me finish my statement.
What do you mean pretending to be refugees?
Let me finish my statement. When I say pretending to be refugees and being invited into the home, you would think that these people were helpless and were going to be grateful to the people that hosted them. People like Muhammad Hadid, Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid's father, who was an infant at this time in his mother's arms. She had just given birth. They had invited these refugees because of the goodness of their heart. And then one day they return home and their doors are locked and they are told that if you try to enter, you are going to be shot and killed. That is the reality of how Israel was established as a state. Okay, that is not a stain that you can wipe from history. Most Americans growing up actually believe what happened was that, okay, it was a little messy. That's what happens after wars. Borders get changed. But at the very least, they were given money. I mean, you've lived here for hundreds of years. Here's money for your property. No, that's not what happened. They were forced out of their homes at gunpoint.
Listen,
and it's wrong. So we get to be the nation.
But you know what else, Candace? And see, this is where this needs to be said, right? You know who else wasn't given money for their property or the land that was stolen from them? And, you don't have to go across the pond for this one. You know who else? American freedmen in this country. American freedmen in this country were not given money for the land and the homes that were stolen from them. This is after Reconstruction. And then went forward with other policies like redlining and all of that. I get into that a little bit more in the documentary, but see what I'm saying? See what I mean? And what you're going to see is a lot of the people, there's more conservatives coming after Candace now. Some of the conservatives coming after her because of her position on this and because she went on press TV, but they didn't have a problem when she was throwing black people under the bus. They had a problem with that because they needed her for that. Oh, yes, we remember. Us black people, we remember. Look, I agree with what Candace is doing now, calling out like what Israel is doing, etc. But that don't mean I forgot the things that she said about black folk when it was profitable to do so. I remember.
according to you, the thing that America gets. Let me finish. I'm going to let you finish. It's your show. We can. But let me finish. Your argument is that what we get to be is that nation that keeps supporting it as they continue to move their borders in this way. Now we're seeing that incursion into Gaza, and we are certainly going to see it by the end of this administration in the West Bank. Because, like I said, that is why Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million.
Look, as you know, I oppose what the Israeli government is doing now in Gaza. I oppose the expansion of settlements on the West Bank. I think all of that is completely wrong. I do think America supports Israel because it remains the only democracy in the Middle East, and that's an important...
They're not a democracy. Stop saying that, Pierce. You know better.
Well, they have elections.
How is Israel a real democracy if they don't even have a constitution? Does anybody ever ask that question? Anybody ever asked that question? Has anyone who ever came on the Piers Morgan show asked that question? A lot of times people don't want to bring it up. No constitution.
Democracy.
They have elections.
But who gets to vote in those elections? Do the Gazans get to vote in that election?
Well, the Israelis get to vote in Israel, obviously.
Okay, so you're basically saying America had a democracy, we had
Israel
laws that said Black Americans couldn't, Black Americans
Israel
couldn't
moved
vote.
out. It is indisputable that Israel moved out of Gaza in 2005, and there was an election, and Hamas got elected. Right now,
yeah,
I agree.
I agree with
you. I agree with.
Listen, Bibi Netanyahu was on camera saying that they were going to fund Hamas into power. So they orchestrated that because they wanted to create the solution.
I agree with you that Netanyahu wanted to cause a split between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. It was divide and rule. It was a catastrophically bad strategy, and it led to what happened on October the 7th over a 20-year period. There's no doubt it was a terrible thing that Netanyahu did. One of the many reasons I think he should go. But there was no doubt that the Israelis pulled out of Gaza and allowed them to have elections, and they elected Hamas, and the rest has been disastrous.
How do you officially pull out of Gaza if you go into Gaza every so often and mow the lawn? How do you officially pull out if you do that?
Because the Israelis funded, because Bibi Netanyahu, they funded Hamas. I don't
disagree with you, but they still had elections.
So it's like we rigged an election, but look what the election results show is that they wanted to put Hamas into power. And so when we talk about who is funding these terrorists, the answer is Bibi Netanyahu. And I don't want to get into his corruption trials, but every single person watching this right now should go pursue the documentary, The Bibi Files, because it is absolutely stunning to understand.
I believe one of the reasons. I believe one of the reasons. Let me
answer the question, because you still haven't given me anything other than like you guys get a pat on the back for supporting this created nation in the Middle East. I also just like to say all of the bad things that we have gotten because of our continued relation with Israel. First and foremost, the open borders. And you can relate to this. People in the UK, they just can't seem to connect the dots.
All right.
Oh my gosh, what's happening here? But I want to say this. Okay. We don't understand where all these refugees are coming from. Oh my God. Where are all these refugees coming from? Who's funding them coming over into these borders? Well, this is what you get when you keep supporting these nonstop wars, when you keep bombing where these people live. And it's not even just a conspiracy, by the way. If you're like,
actually, you're wrong about this, because the vast majority of people coming into the UK illegally are not coming from war-torn countries in the Middle East. They're actually economic migrants.
Okay.
So that's not true.
Okay, but let's connect that. When you say economic migrants, are we talking about like
people who literally want to come to the UK for a better life?
And when Gaddafi was heading up Libya and the country was on the up and up, and he was working with the United Nations, and then all of a sudden he warned that if you collapse Libya and turn it into a place where refugees are escaping, that this is going to be your problem, Europe. He warned that. So then it actually happened, and now we're just calling them economic migrants. We're going to pretend that we had nothing to do.
People coming from Libya.
Okay, where are you speaking about?
Well, for example, I think it was last.
You're not talking about people coming from Libya, but that's another example. I think Pierce is struggling with this because Candace came on there giving what I consider to be left positions. Like a lot of the things that Candace is saying, these are things that we have been saying on the left for a long time. And she's conservative. So, I think in the past, when he was used to having her on, it was, okay, she's conservative, I'm conservative. We know we agree on this much. But then this whole Israel thing happened. And that kind of changed everything. You can watch the rest of the full discussion on, of course, Pierce Morgan's channel there. But I want to show you another one. Here's a conservative. They coming after her now. See, you see, they making the videos now, right? And also, and guys, let me tell you something. Same way I told you before that people were being paid, they were being paid to attack Jill Stein and stuff like that. I think some of these people being paid to make these videos about Candace too, or any of us that come after Israel, right? So watch this. See, they coming after her now. Now they don't like her.
Support your homeland, or at least your alleged sugar daddy over there in Iran. Now, this right here is the exact news segment where Candace Qatari money, dollar signs, in my eyes was featured on Iranian television right there. You can go watch the actual segment for itself, but I really just wanted to get into the context of the message. The most predictable war, plausibly ever. I'm so sick of Israel. Who would have imagined that an emphasis on Israel, as those who pretend its actions are normal or even remotely justifiable. This country has a bloodlust like no other. Have an issue with this tweet? I literally do not care. Think defending Israel's demonic actions. It's interesting. You
So first of all, this guy isn't even really talented. But I just want to go ahead and say here. So you see what's happening, right? And of course, what they do is they get another black person to do it. So it's a black person coming after another black person, right? So it doesn't look as suspect, apparently. But she was on Press TV, and apparently he's attacking that. You know, that a lot of people coming after her since this last discussion with Pierce Morgan, even though she had previous discussions with him. So there's a lot of us that have been on Press TV, right? So Press TV, it's like, you know, based in Iran. They bring you on to talk about foreign policy. So like I've been on there. My comrade Nick from RBN has been on there. Professor Morandi, I believe, has been on there probably numerous times. Like there are a number of us that have been featured on there. We were not paid. And from what I understand, I would assume that Candace wasn't paid either. In fact, most of the time when we do interviews, we are not paid. I got compensation from one organization, right? But other than that, you're not paid. As far as my knowledge, if something is different, let me know. But as far as my experience, that has not been the case. And Press TV also, again, keep in mind, like it's not like they have, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So they don't have money to just start paying all these people and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So this guy here, he's reaching, but I feel like he was told to do this.
refer to demons because I would assume that's where you went. That's where you are. That's what happened to you, possibly. Just an assumption here. I literally do not care. Think that defending Israel's demonic actions is going to guarantee you a spot in heaven, ? I would be questioning myself, by the way, if I were Qatari dollars, Owens. Double your indulgences and sign your offspring up to die for Netanyahu. Leave the rest of us the hell alone. Now, if this wasn't preceded by 2 to 3 years straight of nothing but absolute hatred and vitriol in this woman's heart for the Jewish people, then, you know, this could just be taken as a true, I guess, call for peace. But in reality, all this is a continuation of the exact same rhetoric that has been pushed by Miss Candace over here. So, folks out there, continue to think for yourself, read for yourselves. Do not rely on individuals on the other side of a screen. Rely on the one. Why?
Yeah, he's saying that as he telling you what to do, right? What to think. So that's the thing. So now they're saying, and again, I haven't seen any evidence that says she's taken some type of money. And I know what that's like because I've had people throw like things like that my way saying, oh, you're taking right wing money. It's so funny. That was during 2024, like during the election season. And then all those people just disappeared out of nowhere. All of a sudden, those accounts were no longer around on Twitter. Interesting how that happens. And I said, okay, prove it. And they can't because it's false. So you see this happening with Candace here. They're trying to say she's taking that money and that's why she's doing that. Again, I haven't seen any proof of that. And my thing is, if that's the case, then prove it. You should have no problem coughing up receipts to show that kind of stuff. But like I said, this guy is very talentless, as you can tell. But that being said, I think, people are just waking up, man. People are just waking up. I think Pierce Morgan is very obvious to me that he does not know much about the Middle East like he thinks that he does. And he just spews a lot of propaganda. And maybe that's why he blocked me. Maybe that's why he blocked me, because I was just like, you spread propaganda. If I can be real, if he's afraid of me, seriously. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.